All right. Hello and welcome to the first and potentially last episode of Lowcountry Crawl. Today, I'm so excited to do like a casual hangout slash interview with the two writers of Lowcountry Crawl 1.5. John Gregory is joining us by. Hello and welcome to the first and potentially last episode of Lowcountry Crawl. I'm so excited to bring a quick interview with the two writers of Lowcountry Crawl 1.5. We have John Gregory joining us remotely, and my buddy Stephen Bramlett is here in the real world. Just going to take a few minutes today to chat with both of them about the experience of writing this Southern Gothic RPG zine, what it was like to take real history and turn it into gameable content, and sort of pick their brains about some influences and things they're excited for the future. So, Johnny, I'm going to start with you. You have been writing this kind of stuff for a while, right?
Yeah, I guess was it started in 2018, working up some stuff, and then come 2019, this guy named David says, "Hey, I'm really interested in your stuff. Let's make a zine out of it." So yeah, Low Country Crawl was kind of originally born out of me growing up having two things that I enjoyed doing. It was Dungeons and Dragons and tromping around Beaufort County. And I was tired of your standard medieval fantasy nonsense, and I wanted to let people know that they could take their hometown, home area, take nearby history, take things and be inspired by them and be excited by them and help them learn more about their local world. And I think I did as good of a job as I could with it. But I am definitely happy to see where it's going. It's going where I wanted it to go. It's going to the people who I wished had written it before I even had any part in it. So I'm very thankful for Stephen and the Low Country Action Council, taking a hand in this and making it their baby. It's when you first told me that you found people that not only were willing to take it on but excited to take it on, like that was so much more exciting to me than even you saying, all right, let's get this thing published.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Johnny and I released Lowcountry Crawl 1 in 2019, which feels like a dozen years ago, but it was only 2 years ago. And it was really sort of slapdash. I threw in some free public domain artwork. Johnny already had a ton of stuff written, and we cleaned it up, added a little bit, fleshed it out, put it in a zine, and got it out the door pretty quick. I think the whole thing came together in like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
This took a little longer.
Yeah. Well, and we got out the door, and it was a big hit. A lot of people liked it. But we sort of slowly began to realize that if we're going to write a zine about 19th century Southern US and themes of horror and darkness and like the grim realities of history, it wasn't quite our story to tell. And we decided not to reprint Low Country Crawl 1 until we could find a better team. And I was really supportive of this shared vision. I really appreciated Johnny going along with that. I know it can be difficult to pivot a project, especially a successful one like this. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I reached out to my friend Stephen, who is giant nerd, has a lot of experience. And I showed him the book, and I was like, do you want to write something like this? Stephen, how did it feel to, and the book that's coming out in a few days, or maybe today, whenever this interview goes live, is Low Country Crawl 1.5. We're calling it more than a reprint, but not quite a sequel. It has about 20 extra pages of content, so it's a beefier zine. So it has writing from John's original work and a bunch of cool additions from Stephen. So Stephen, how did it feel to step into like an existing project and add your voice to that?
I liked it because I'm newer at writing. Like I've been doing like the amateur and I've kind of created some of my own comic book characters based off of my daughters and whatnot. But the world was so great, and living in Charleston for the past 10 years, I felt like I really understood what he was doing, and it was great seeing things like I'm trying to blank on it. Not Mudwater. Help me out here.
It's like Pluff Mud.
Pluff Mud. Oh man. Yeah, I'm sure.
How could you not include Pluff Mud? Like it's
but
the character.
it was great, sort of like like living here for a while, and then seeing this fantasy world expand around it, and I just love fantasy, and so I was really excited to be part of it. And as the vision expanded, we wanted to take a step back and say, actually, let's reset. And it's been great connecting with John on this.
Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is that with Lowcountry Crawl 1.5, we were able to bring on a ton of extra consultants. Working with the Lowcountry Action Committee, particularly Erica Veal, one of the co-founders, she did a fantastic job bringing in lots of real-world history and lots of really good insights on how to make sure that this is representative and handling the subject with care.
I really enjoyed reading her comments during the draft phase. Like, that's knowledge that I couldn't have brought to the table, and is amazing to have here.
Yeah. I think for me, like even though I'm African American, and and there were still things that I was even growing in. Like when she said, "Hey, don't even use the word slave, use the word enslaved," and I thought, like, that makes perfect sense. It took me only a second to realize that I should be doing that, but her nuggets of wisdom, coming from someone that's consistently on the forefront, was great as well.
And so let's transition to that topic. Is this difficult for a lot of us to talk about because it was such a huge trauma in our history and something we're all still recovering from? So it was difficult for us to make a game that doesn't shy away from topics of slavery and racial prejudice and a lot of the disenfranchisement that those people have dealt with. Why did we do that? Why don't we just avoid this? We all play in Tolkien's world where orcs are bad and elves are good, and we don't worry about all this stuff. Why would we bring in such a negative thing into a fantasy game?
For me personally, I'm fascinated with history. I'm fascinated with how history has brought people groups, and who we are now. I think history needs to be told, and told in the right way. And sometimes fantasy is the best way. And so having a little, bit of, like, I guess we would call it dark fantasy, in the sense of blood and gore. I like it. I like when we start talking about it, that it was just an easy thing of like, let's go there, let's see what happens. And I also like the fact that I don't think we pulled our punches, but we tried to make it accessible to anyone. So the game master has a choice on how gritty they want it to be, and how much they can take it. So even if you're someone that says, okay, I'm a little bit like, I don't want to feel like I'm just going through something terrible. We try to make it like, so many, it's very intentional. we try to make it irreverent and funny, but still deal with difficult subject matter, because sometimes irreverent and funny is the best way to do it. Like Quentin Tarantino does that a little bit. Like, it's bloody, it's irreverent, but you still feel the weight and the pain and the oppression. So
yeah, and that was one of the limitations that Johnny and I bumped into when we were working on the first one. I don't know how much
can we pull the punches, because it definitely, y'all pulled the punches less in 1.5
Mhm.
than we did in one. One was more generic than I would have liked it to have been. But again, from my experience and my capabilities, I knew that if I tried to go a little bit deeper, I definitely would not have done as good of job at capturing that necessary darkness, that necessary, experience that you and the Low Country Action Committee helped bring to that. And I think, again, like you were saying, like you love history and you love fantasy, and that's a large reason why I, made Low Country Crawl in the first place. I've got a history degree. I'm big into anthropology. I'm big into learning, about new people and new things. Um, I'm also big into like, remembering the past and knowing that, this is what we've experienced. This is what we can learn from, and this is where we can go. And something like fantasy is a great way to sort of introduce the interest to people about these things. How many history nerds out there today, first got inspired by fictional accounts, and I always hope that something I write like this will inspire some Joe Blow who doesn't know anything about the Low Country or Gullah or anything like that. They read this and are like, huh, I want to learn more about what inspired this. I want to, educate myself. And that's what I hope that Low Country Crawl does is inspires more people to learn more about themselves, learn more about the history, and maybe inspire them to look more into their own local area.
Yeah, I'm probably the least qualified between the three of us. I never enjoyed history. I never had a real interest in it. And I always struggled to stay awake in history class. But just working on this game has forced me to interact with people and subjects and stuff that I've never really thought about before. I've had the pleasure of working with a ton of people who are super experienced and qualified, people like Steven, people like John, people like Eric Avil, who have this passion, are able to bring that perspective to even something as, I don't want to say lighthearted, because I don't think Low Country Crawl is necessarily lighthearted, but it's a book that exists to promote fun and engagement with people, which is such an interesting way to tackle history, because history is often ugly or it's completely glossed over, sort of a Leave It to Beaver kind of way. Um, and I'm really glad that with 1.5 we had the team and the resources to tackle some of these darker issues and represent, the struggles and triumphs of people and enslaved folks, and a lot of the evils of corruption that happened then. Uh, so let's pivot a little bit. Stephen, what was like the weirdest part of working on a role-playing game? Because you've never done that before.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, it's really fun, and I did a little bit, like I remember even in like daycare, which I probably isn't the best place, but they would play riffs and stuff, and so I've had some experience with it, but the weirdest part was um handing over part of the storytelling to the game master, and learning to trust game masters in not being so explicit in how to tell the story, but giving them enough of like my story and my experiences and the history I studied. Some of this comes from conversations with my grandfather. Some of this comes from some things that I've experienced as a kid. I wrote a little bit of the character Bina and myself as this sort of naive person saying, let's change the system. And then be like, oh, there are powerful forces at work that make the system hard to change. And so so like it was tricky, but I guess, not digressing too much, or at least coming back. Handing over part of the story to the game master and realizing, like, you and I did a run through John Gregory's and it was amazing. And I know game masters are talented, but seeing how talented they are was very fun to see.
He's talking about me. I ran that game.
You did, yes,
I
you
was
did.
very talented.
Yes, you were.
I did a great job. Just
But yeah, it was fun.
I'll say if David was your first GM, then you've been spoiled. He's a really good guy.
I thought you said I feel sorry for you. No, it was fabulous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really have enjoyed just building off of all the seeds that are in Lowcountry Crawl. I think it has so much potential and so much vibrancy. What about you, Johnny? Was this because this was kind of your first like big breakout, was it? Or did you have your blog was still big before
You're assuming,
that, right? yeah, right. I helped you.
Right? Yeah, like before this, I just had my little blog, Unlawful Games, and it was originally just like little blog classes and random tables, and here's some of these fun little things. And then I was like, you know what? I don't hear enough people talking about South Carolina. Let's talk a little bit about South Carolina on my game blog. And then I found this publisher who was I was like, oh yeah, we share some same interests. He's from Charleston. He's not far from my folks. Then things came together, and here we are today. Yeah, like before this, the most like writing experience I had outside of term papers and things like that was the blog and like doing play-by-post role playing and things like that. So being able to put something into like a product that people can see and interact with and like hold in their hands, like that's the best part, I think, is producing something that people can touch, and it makes it that more real. PDFs are great, but buy physical copies of Lowcountry Crawl.
That's right. Physical copies should be available before the end of September. They're getting printed at a local printer, so I don't have to wait on shipping, and I can start getting those on store shelves soon. But Johnny, can you take 2 minutes and sort of plug some of the other projects you've worked on? Because I think you're so talented and you have so much of this stuff available.
Sure. Well, I helped a little bit with Bone Marshes.
Mm-hmm.
Bone Marshes. I added a few things to Tempered Legacy. If you ever want magical items, go to Tempered Legacy. I've got Gourmet Street. That's part of my other love about cultures is all the food that they bring. So if you want to add some cool food to your game, then this is it for you. Mm-hmm. I don't have a copy of the Book of Gob yet. It's still just finished its Kickstarter, and it's takes my other passion of horror and make something out of it. Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, Stephen, it is definitely inspired by everything we read furtively in the elementary school library with what's called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and things like that.
Goosebumps, yeah.
I was lucky enough to work with Paulo Greco on that. It was really great. I feel like you and I are very lucky, Stephen, that's like David's our first publisher. And then I'm very lucky to have had Paulo as my second publisher. Like, this is the best of all possible worlds first experience with a publisher of zines and books.
Yeah, it's been great. He's able to shape the artist and everything and get it to a something that's that the reader understands. And like I really like the feedback back and forth, and I would just go back and keep writing. And so I'm very excited for what's about to happen.
And I think David definitely brings, something to the table that is very handy in a publisher, is that like he might not necessarily be the expert in the subject you're writing. He might not necessarily like love the subject you're writing, but he loves your act of writing, and he knows what works. His unnamed editor that helped make sure Lowcountry Crawl 1 wasn't a blathering mess. Was very helpful. I don't know if you got this one, but early in my writing of Lowcountry Crawl 1, I was told Johnny works best when he has a limited space to work in.
Well, like I said, I was making these fantastic stories because Joe Abercrombie, R.R. Martin are two of my favorite, and they are, I mean, I love them, but you can argue that especially Martin can be a little more tedious, and we had to go back and sort of refine it, you know, and sometimes less was more in the sense of what to give the GMs, you know, that ties in earlier to trusting the GMs, realizing how great they are. So that was a great input, and yeah.
I think that's the beautiful part of like the rise of RPG zines again versus, you know, all of these $50 modules that come prepackaged with like every little step along the way. Like we're creating beautiful seeds to blossom in the minds of GMs and players. And I feel like that sort of respects people's abilities and helps them grow much more than, you know, here's point A, point B, and point C. If your players, you know, go off the train track, whoops.
Yeah.
But now they can go off the train tracks and end up in some pluff mud, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to follow up with what Johnny was saying and sort of wax poetic about RPGs because it's a collaborative game. By its definition, you are building something special with the other players at the table, and that spreads into the creation side of things. I get to work with Johnny and Steven and tons of great editors and consultants and artists. Oh my gosh. When you all see the artwork that Michael Lee Harris did for Lowcountry Crawl, it's so rad. There's a couple spreads that have black pages with white text because he did this really stark, dark comic book artwork, like sort of a Hellboy type style. So great.
I feel like his work and Charlie Ferguson, Avery's work from the first one, and the stuff that you put together, David, it all meshes very well.
Yeah, Charlie Ferguson Avery also did a great job. He really nails this like creepy line art style that blends with some of the other public domain stuff we found. So I'm so pumped for y'all to see some of the new artwork that's in this one. And this is a project that I think has a lot of potential going forward. I kind of want to pick your brain, especially you, Stephen, about what is the future of Lowcountry Crawl? Like, nothing we say is a promise, nothing we say is set in stone, but we're both really excited about, you know, we sort of brought on Johnny's initial seed, got this whole thing started, just the blog, and then Lowcountry Crawl 1, and then Stephen has stepped in to sort of add on to it and build it. But now the stage is set for all kinds of stuff. And what things are you excited about?
Yeah, I like to think of ourselves as dreamers and visionaries in the most optimistic sense, and maybe illusion sense.
Most humble sense.
Humble sense. Yeah. I'm a humble visionist. Yeah. So, yeah. Can I give a little background on a little bit of the story? I don't know how much we want to tell or not. Okay. Yeah, so the story contains this ideal of what if slavers, what if they didn't just take people and resources, but what if they took mystical creatures as well? And I studied a lot on African folklore, and what if they took some African folklore creatures and brought them to Charleston and brought them to the Low Country, which is the Charleston area, the Tri-County area. And what if they became part of the landscape? And what if some of them were just very upset and dangerous because they were here? And so, and part of that then goes into, well, what would people say and who's to blame for it? So on some levels, you know, the enslaved is to blame, you know, well, not to blame, but the enslaved is to blame for some of the destruction and things of these creatures. And so anyway, so that's sort of the background is, what if in this land there is there is a sort of dystopian, dark, folkloric African creatures going on, mystical creatures, which we call misstaffs for mystical African creatures. And then we have a couple of adventures that circle around that. I think moving forward, I envision either let's see if I can explain it. I'm glad you're editing this. Hopefully this part's edited a little bit, so there's just I envision
It's all going in.
Oh man. Yeah, I think moving forward, I envision two things. One is more redemptive stories of the railroad and people escaping slavery, and our heroes being able to partake in this and fend off the mischiefs, or in some cases actually befriend the ones that are nice and good and misunderstood. So that's one part, is looking at that, maybe even looking at some true life characters like Robert Smalls and what he did. And then the second part of that, it potentially is, what does it look like in a post-slave world, and dealing with a little bit of like intrigue, like political intrigue of how do we begin the redemptive process of healing past slavery. So
that's so exciting. I love the idea of the misstaffs as a way to add sort of a fantastical way to empower disenfranchised folks, to sort of change the narrative, mix things up, and allow us to explore like an alternate history.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. That's super cool. And that gives us another chance to explore like other cultures, creatures, legends, lore, not just based in the Lowcountry, but the whole continent. So
yeah, that too. And I forgot, a huge part is we want to take another deeper look into the native Charleston, South Carolina culture of the Gullah in the next one too, and bring on more people that can help represent that, maybe. So I'm speaking for you, but
no.
That is something that I'm happy came up too in the conversation, because like I think a big part of what got me really interested into, more than just looking at the real world, more fantastical, more like culturally amazing things, is growing up with stories about, root and boo hags and platt eyes and, all of these sort of things that, is so much more than the vanilla experience of being a, poor white Southerner. And it made me from very young realize, like, man, this world is so much more complex and so much more interesting and so much deeper than, what I'm getting right here in small town Beaufort County, Beaufort. So no, when I saw that section when I was going through the drafts, I was like, yes, going in the right direction. I'm so excited. And the fact that you want to explore that more in two.
Yeah. Well, and I'll turn it around to, if you're watching this video right now, your support is going to make that possible, because we're a small team working on a small budget. Consultants and experts deserve to be paid well. They are worth the money. And so if Lowcountry Crawl sells a ton and does well, we'll be able to bring on hopefully some Gullah writers, local artists, people from other backgrounds to contribute to this.
Remember, we're one of the few RPG zines you'll ever back that donates to charity as well.
That's right. 20% of every Lowcountry Crawl sale goes directly to the Lowcountry Action Committee. I'll plug them now as well. They are a black-led group that is local in Charleston. Their biggest contribution, I would say, to the city right now, in addition to education and local support, is they do a fantastic grocery drive every third Saturday of the month that I've been able to be involved in. That's really, really cool. They're feeding people that need it, and doing a lot of good in the local community, and doing a lot of cool education about activism and justice. We're really excited to support them with sales of Lowcountry Crawl, and we're super pumped to connect with a lot more local groups and activists and work with them on this, because I think a huge part of Lowcountry Crawl is activism and fighting against injustice.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, go support Lowcountry Action Committee if you can. Just by purchasing a copy of the print or the PDF, you're supporting them as well. So we really thank and appreciate whatever support you can give whoever's watching this right now, but especially you. Especially. Closing thoughts? Anything you want to say before we call it?
I would say, I think, yeah. The part that I wrote was created with this intentionality of having fun with it, but realizing it's serious too. So, laugh, joke, and then remember some of the history. Like, we spent a lot of time trying to parse the history and give you parts of Charleston, Beaufort, South Carolina, Lowcountry culture. So, but at the same time, like, it was meant to be enjoyable. We purposely decided not to go full horror of this, which was a question early on, was like, oh man, this is some dark stuff. Like, are we going to go full horror? We're like, no, let's make it accessible to as many people as possible. So,
yep, that's great. And actually, in the very first few pages of the book, Stephen does a great little aside, an introduction to the book and how to approach it in a healthy way. So that's all laid out. A lot of cool tools are given to you. You don't have to be intimidated by the content inside of it.
Please don't, be as subversive as you want, but it's also, there's a constructive element where, I'll say a lot of us are trying to move in the same place, the same way, and sometimes our differences just need to be understood and overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Johnny, do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't know. When I first heard where this was going, I got teary-eyed, and I have to admit that it's hard for me to catch my breath seeing where it's going and seeing this finally happen. So I'm, it's like seeing my baby grow up and go out there in the world and, be more than just a awkward adolescent. They're really making a difference and doing things now. So, I've got about 14 years on my daughter before I get to experience that again. So helping me get ready for that, Steven.
Oh man. My daughter will be 3 forever.
Right.
I'll be happy as she grows and becomes a beautiful person.
This has been a lovely experience, and I look forward to continuing to work together with y'all on more projects. Now that you've gotten your taste, Steven, I hope to see a lot more RPG stuff from you. Make a blog, community. Yeah. Get on Discord with us.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm in it to win it. I can't wait for us to go through the game. So
yeah, and I'm really thankful for both of y'all for taking your time for this fun interview. This has been great. Always great hanging out with the two of you, working with y'all. I'm so pumped for Lowcountry Crawl 1.5, probably out by the time you see this. You can find it on print copies, will be available on Spearwitch to start, hopefully on a few other storefronts as well. You can also grab the PDF from Itch, DriveThruRPG, and you can learn more about it by going to technicalgrimoire.com. There will be links below the video. But thank you again for joining us. Thanks for watching this little interview, and I hope that everybody is excited about Lowcountry Crawl as we are. And go buy a copy, support Lowcountry Action Committee, support us so we can make more. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.
Thanks.